What if Hobbs and Shaw already lost? They just don't know it yet. Hobbs and Shaw 2 will not start with a bigger mission or a louder explosion. It will start with a lie, because the biggest twist of the sequel is not who the villain is, but the fact that the real enemy was never defeated in the first movie. Everyone thinks Brixton died, but Hobbs and Shaw never destroyed the project. They only removed the prototype, and Hobbs and Shaw 2 is the moment where that mistake comes back to collect its debt. The movie will sell itself as another global threat, another high-risk operation, another impossible mission that only these two can handle. But this time, the call does not come from desperation, it comes from strategy. Because someone has been watching Hobbs and Shaw since the first film, studying them, measuring them, learning exactly how they fight, how they adapt, how they survive, and most importantly, how they rely on each other. This is where everything changes, because the villain of Hobbs and Shaw 2 is not one man trying to overpower them. It is a team designed to neutralize them, and that team exists because Brixton never really left the board. Brixton's body may be gone, but his mind, his combat data, his tactical patterns, his decision-making under pressure, all of it was preserved, refined and repurposed. And instead of creating another super soldier, the system did something smarter. It created specialists, each one built to counter a specific part of Hobbs and Shaw. One to match Hobbs' raw strength, one to outthink Shaw's improvisation, one to predict their teamwork, and one to control the battlefield before either of them can even react. This is why Hobbs and Shaw 2 will feel different from the first movie, because this time every move they make works. Until it doesn't. Every trick they use succeeds. Until someone is already waiting for it. And slowly they realize they are not being challenged. They are being tested. The mission starts clean. The target is clear. The enemy is visible. But then small things begin to break. Extraction points disappear. Backup stops responding. Intel arrives just a little too late. And that's when Shaw starts to understand what Hobbs doesn't yet. This operation was never about stopping a threat. It was about seeing how Hobbs and Shaw operate when the world turns against them. The most dangerous moment in Hobbs and Shaw 2 is not a fight. It's the realization that someone planned for their success. Because when you plan for someone to win, it means you already decided what happens after. This is where Brixton's shadow becomes clear. Because the team hunting them doesn't fight like mercenaries. They fight like an algorithm, adapting mid-combat, sacrificing members without hesitation, closing escape routes before they're even used. And Hobbs finally understands the truth. Brixton was never meant to win in the first film. He was meant to fail so the system could learn. And just when it feels like the Fast and Furious family should step in, just when this should become a call the crew moment, it doesn't happen. Because Hobbs and Shaw 2 quietly confirm something fans don't want to admit. The family is not coming. Not because they don't care, but because they can't. This threat doesn't exist in street races or explosive finales. It exists in sealed files, black sites, and deniable operations. Places where family means nothing and names don't protect you. Hobbs is no longer the man the system calls for help. He is the liability the system needs erased. And Shaw is the variable they never managed to fully control. As the movie escalates, the villain team doesn't try to kill them immediately. They corner them, isolate them, force them to burn contacts, destroy safe zones, and choose between saving civilians or saving each other. And that's when the real goal becomes obvious. This is not about killing Hobbs and Shaw. It's about proving they are obsolete. The system wants to show the world that heroes like them are unpredictable, expensive, and unnecessary, that controlled weapons are better than free ones. And the final act of Hobbs and Shaw 2 is not a clean victory, it's an escape. They survive. They take down part of the operation. They expose enough to slow it down. But the team behind Brixton doesn't collapse. It retreats, reorganizes, and disappears back into the shadows. Because this was only phase 1. The film doesn't end with celebration. It ends with absence. Hobbs of the grid, Shaw back in the shadows. Both officially erased, unofficially hunted. And the last message is clear. The world no longer needs them as protectors. It wants them gone as reminders of a time when people solved problems with fists instead of systems. And that's the real setup of Hobbs and Shaw 2. Not a sequel about saving the world, but the beginning of a war where the world has already decided they are the problem. And if Brixton was the future they stopped once, then this time the future is coming back prepared, patient, and no longer interested in giving them a second chance. And this is the moment where Hobbs and Shaw 2 truly reveals what kind of movie it is. Because once Hobbs and Shaw go off the grid, the rules change completely. No backup, no clearance, no authority. Just two men realizing that every place they ever considered safe was mapped long before they arrive. This is where the Brixton project shows its real evolution. Because the team hunting them is no longer reacting, it is predicting. And the most unsettling detail is that they don't rush, they wait, allowing Hobbs and Shaw to make choices that slowly box them in. One safe house burns, another contact disappears, and suddenly Shaw notices something that confirms his worst suspicion. The system isn't trying to kill them fast, it's trying to understand which one of them breaks first. This is where the movie quietly splits the two characters, not emotionally, but tactically, because Hobbs is built to confront problems head on, to smash through walls when necessary, while Shaw survives by disappearing, adapting, and striking from angles no one expects, and the enemy knows this. The hunters begin forcing scenarios designed to isolate them. Situations where Hobbs' strength becomes a liability and Shaw's instincts become a risk. And that's when Hobbs realizes the uncomfortable truth. This team wasn't built to defeat them together. It was built to dismantle them separately. The deeper they dig, the clearer Brixton's real role becomes. Because Brixton was never meant to be the face of the project, he was the proof of concept. The first experiment to show that human unpredictability could be measured, recorded, and eventually replaced. What Hobbs and Shaw are fighting now is the second generation, not stronger, not faster, but smarter, designed with one simple goal: remove variables from warfare, starting with the most uncontrollable ones. As the chase escalates across borders, cities, and black zones that don't officially exist, Shaw uncovers a file that shifts the entire narrative. A contingency protocol labeled with their names, activated the moment they went rogue. This protocol doesn't authorize their capture, it authorizes their replacement. New operatives are already being deployed, using tactics refined from Hobbs and Shaw's own past missions, achieving cleaner results, fewer casualties, and most importantly, no collateral chaos. And that's when the message becomes clear. The world doesn't need legends anymore, it needs efficiency. The most brutal sequence in Hobbs and Shaw 2 isn't a fight. It's a moment where Hobbs watches footage of a mission completed exactly the way he would have done it. Only faster, quieter, and without him. And for the first time, brute force doesn't solve the problem. Because you can't punch relevance back into existence. Shaw understands it immediately, because this has always been his nightmare. A world where skill is copied, instincts are simulated, and survival becomes obsolete. As they push toward the final act, the villain team finally speaks directly, not with threats, but with logic, explaining that Hobbs and Shaw are not enemies. They are templates, and the system is grateful for their service. The confrontation doesn't end in total victory, because it can't. The infrastructure behind the project is too deep to distribute it, too protected by governments that will never appear on screen. And Hobbs and Shaw are forced into the only win left to them: exposure. They leak enough data to fracture trust, trigger internal purges, and slow the rollout, but they don't destroy it. And that's what makes the ending dangerous. The final scenes show Hobbs choosing exile over control, refusing to become what the system wants him to be, while Shaw vanishes completely, erasing himself so thoroughly that even the hunters lose his trail. The movie closes not with triumph, but with uncertainty. Because the last thing we see is a quiet activation screen, a delayed protocol still counting down, suggesting that what Hobbs and Shaw stopped was only one layer of something far bigger. And this is the real promise of Hobbs and Shaw 2, not a loud sequel about saving the world, but a warning about a future where heroes are studied, copied, and eventually replaced, where survival isn't about strength or speed, but about whether you can stay human in a system that no longer needs you to be. And if that future is already in motion, then the most dangerous question isn't whether Hobbs and Shaw can win. It's whether there will still be a place for them when the world decides it doesn't want legends anymore. And that's where Hobbs and Shaw 2 really ends, not with a win, but with a warning. Because the system they exposed is still active, still adapting, and still coming. And now Hobbs and Shaw are no longer heroes fixing problems. They are targets in a world that already decided it doesn't need them anymore.